I'm not excellent at many things, but the thing that I am very good at is giving language to the way that I feel. That's what making great art is to me. It's a form of caring and connection.
I think you're such a great songwriter, man, and I loved
That's
this
so
record.
Kind.
Great
Thank you
melody
so much.
writer, great lyric writer.
Oh, those are the things I love to do.
Come on.
That's really sweet.
How you doing?
I'm good. I'm like in the middle of the craziest tour of my life and having such a blast.
How was Madison Square Garden? 2 nights?
Like unbelievably crazy. 2 nights sold out. The night before I played night 1, I sat down at my kitchen table in New York and wrote a list of every single venue I'd ever played in New York, of which there were like 30.
From the smallest.
I went to college in New York, so I played my first gig there when I was 18 to like 20 people. And there was nowhere left to play in New York City. It was just to be able to walk in and feel like I had earned it, or like the foundation was just so solid. It took 12 years, and it just feels really good. It's been amazing on this tour to walk onto these stages, and actually, I was so nervous because these legendary places, and to show up and feel like it was a test I actually just studied really hard for.
What do you mean by that?
Like, I feel prepared.
Right.
Like, I just got off the road with Coldplay doing stadiums. I opened in arenas with Mumford & Sons 6 years ago, and I've been touring my little booty off in the meantime. And so to show up, and I think the beginning of my career was so fast that there were a lot of these big moments where I felt kind of overwhelmed, or like I was growing into it really quickly. And in the last 4 or 5 years, it's just the timing has been really gradual and really wonderful. It's so nice to be able to arrive at a big milestone and feel really ready for it.
Were you able to take it in the moment? Were you able to? Was there a 5 seconds on stage where you were able to go, oh, wow, okay?
I mean, definitely. It was definitely, like, by the end of the second night, I was like having to hold one of the biggest emotional moments of my life over the span of 2 or 3 days. Like, was definitely like kind of crazy. But there was this one moment where I was walking down the runway in my like glitter dress that I designed to look like if Jim Morrison was in a disco band. And everyone was clapping their hands to Falling Water, and which has this like this song has this big gradual bridge that sort of opens into this gospel-esque moment. And to see this whole arena of people who have been there since the beginning, people who came and bought tickets in person, friends, families, professors, grad school colleagues, like it was just so, so special.
I loved the songs on this record before I knew how quickly you wrote them. So it was a bit of a surprise to me. Is this true? You wrote all of them in 5 days?
Yeah.
What's going on with that? Maybe I can ask a question about it, but tell me about it.
Well, I can tell you what's going on.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. It was, Surrender took like 2 years. And I really do think that there is this, it was really nice to have a very long process and then nice to have a very quick process.
Yeah.
It was 2 songs a day for 5 days.
Right, right, top to bottom.
In tracklist order. Yeah, and it was also the first time Ian Fitchuk and I, who is my co-producer and co-writer on this record, it was the first time we'd ever even worked together. It was our first time really meeting. And so what was amazing about it is that the pressure was really off. Like it was a couple days on either side of Christmas, basically. And Surrender had kind of recently come out. Like I hadn't even toured Surrender yet. So there was no pressure for me to be putting out another record in any way. I thought it was just the beginning of experimenting. And I think I really made a record because I wasn't trying to make a record. And I think you hear it in the music. The music feels so loose and free and unguarded. They're largely first takes. And when we went back in to try and do the sort of craft part, the elevation and the moving things around and, oh, can we make that part better? How do you hone in on that sound? Every time we touched these arrangements, they fell apart. Like the thing that was so special about them was the personality that came with the openness and the lack of preciousness. And I love that it kind of feels and sounds like a live record, but it was just made by 2 people.
So a couple questions on that. One is, does that do something to your instincts as a songwriter? Like you have no choice but to follow your instincts when you're writing a song and recording it same day?
I've always written songs very quickly.
Oh, yeah?
And I've always recorded them as I've written
You're
them.
not like Leonard Cohen carrying around the book with Hallelujah in it for 8
Drive
years?
me nuts. No. I mean, and even if I've written songs quickly and then sat on them for a while. But like it's interesting because now in my life, I'm doing a lot of longer form essay writing. And when I'm writing in a sort of prose situation, I really know how to be an editor. But with songwriting, there's something so special about the current that comes through and the way that the idea sort of just like falls out onto the page. And I think it also has to do with structure. Songwriting structure is so limited. There's only so much space for what you can say. And the first phrase leads into the second because of just the way the rhyme scheme works.
And you don't have a self-critic for that?
Well, I do, like any other healthy artist, but I think what was awesome about this record is my critic was like nowhere in the room because I didn't think I was making a record.
Right.
I thought I was just writing songs for fun. And turns out, like, you know, that's how anyone starts being creative. And then you spend all this time trying to be great and emulating your heroes and then developing your sound and learning how to be a songwriter. And then just to get back to the point where it's just for fun. That's kind of all you've ever wanted.
When it's not fun, what is it? Like, help me understand. You say, like, I want to get back. I haven't made records at that. I made records in small studios. I haven't made records at that level
When it's
before.
not fun, it's competitive. Because as soon as you start doing it as a professional, as soon as the thing that brought you the most amount of joy becomes your work,
Your job.
then you're trying to achieve something. And that's never really been my MO. But I can remember certain moments where I wanted to write a song that could like really punch. Or, you know, you deliver a record and the record company says you don't have a single. You have to write a song that can compete at a certain level. But I think over time, I've thought less about songs competing and songs just actually being great.
Yeah.
Like, it's been so interesting when we were opening for Coldplay, you know, playing to 80,000 people a night. Some songs work and some songs don't, just simply because of the way that sound travels in a space.
Yeah.
And we, on purpose, I changed the set list every night and we worked through a lot of my catalog because I just wanted to see, based on these 3 records that I've written, what worked in that space and what didn't. And it often, like, the brainy, kind of like nerdy, wordy part of my songwriting, like a song like The Kill, doesn't really work in a stadium because there's too many words. But a song like I Still Do, big, open, simple, crush.
On and on and on, I bet worked well. That's a big pop
On
song.
and on works because the percussion and the rhythmic capacity of that song is so musical. Like, actually, I found the parts of my catalog that were really fun in that space were the ones that leaned more into funk and soul music. Like, Give a Little was really great. On and On was really great. The Knife was really fun. Or the, like, big power ballads, like In the Living Room, which is this new song I put out a couple weeks ago. We were playing it on the road, and it was immediately like, oh, this is going to work in this space.
Did you, when you did the Bruce Springsteen thing, you and Zach Bryan did that Bruce Springsteen, you guys got up together and sang that song, which I really loved. I saw the video of
it was
that.
amazing.
And I've interviewed you a few times now, and it's a weird thing where I feel like I'm rooting for you, you know, when I see you in things now.
Good. I'm rooting for you too, Sal.
I get excited about when I see you on the internet. It made me think this way of making a record is the way he made Nebraska. You know, like he made demos that were meant to show the band. And he was going to show the E Street Band these songs. And then he listened back to them and said they're perfect the way they are and against a lot of people's advice, put them out. I didn't know if you guys had talked about that. I didn't know if you brought it up to him.
No, I mean, we didn't get a ton of time together backstage because it was a pretty just like crazy situation. But I love Nebraska. And I think to me, that way of making Don't Forget Me, or that way of making Nebraska, which is just sort of like making something with intention and with joy, that is really, it's only something that happens when you really know yourself as a songwriter. And it just...
It's something that happens when you know yourself as a songwriter.
I really trust myself.
Yeah.
And I really know when something's working and when it's not. And I don't write very often, but when I do, I really care about what I have to say. Like, I don't open my mouth many times in a songwriting capacity to say something I don't mean in my daily life all the time.
Every day.
Every day.
10 seconds.
But I don't sing things I don't mean.
Look, can we listen to a little bit of it?
Please.
Please. What are we listening to?
So Sick of Dreaming.
Tell me about that song.
What was amazing about making this whole record is that because I made it so quickly, I sort of developed this character. Mm-hmm. And it's my first time kind of writing fiction. Like, I wrote the record as if I was writing a movie. And immediately, this sort of setting, sort of Thelma and Louise-esque, like girl in her mid-20s, road trip through the American Southwest, came into my brain. And so Sick of Dreaming, you know, there's a voicemail section that's very like Shania Twain, Carrie Bradshaw, sassy.
Yeah, what is that voicemail thing?
It was something I just did to make Ian laugh in the studio.
Oh, I thought it was real.
No, it's not real. None of this is real.
I thought it was a real story,
No,
Maggie.
So Sick of Dreaming. I would never say any of those things about a real person I dated. My personal life is personal, but like I treat people with care and with dignity.
Fair enough.
And I do not ever trash people in my songs. Like, it's just not who I am. So Sick of Dreaming was so fun because it was a song written for this character, this like sassy, like, ain't no diamond ring you can buy me to take me home. Like, that's so fun. But it's not like, it was a part of this story I was writing.
Is that new? Had you done that before?
No, I had never written like that. And it was part of why it was so easy. It was because I wasn't like trying to come up with like the greatest, wisest thing to say about my own life. I was writing like a rom-com. And what's so special about that is that through that, the record became almost like this collage of memories from my 20s. And I was able to maybe tell some of the greatest truths about my life and the way that I really felt through writing fiction. And it's been a really interesting process because since writing the record, I've actually been through a breakup. And the record, it's been this like reverse therapy, or like normally when you write a song, mm-hmm. you're reflecting on an experience.
Something that happened.
Exactly.
I went through a breakup. Here's the song about that breakup.
And you've processed it. And so you're reflecting on it in the song.
Yeah.
And then by the time the song comes out,
you're over it.
You're so over it.
Yeah.
And
you've gone through another breakup.
Exactly.
Yeah, right,
exactly.
Right.
So the way that this happened is I wrote this sort of like fictional record.
Yeah.
Then I went through the breakup. Then the record came out.
Yeah.
Right as I was actually feeling in a very raw way all of the things that I had written for this character 18 months previously.
Isn't that interesting?
So it was as if, and it was the best like gift. It was as if I like gave myself a gift to my future self because suddenly I was getting to play all these songs every night on stage that I actually really needed.
Yeah.
Like, I would never write So Sick of Dreaming about somebody that I actually had loved. But when you're going through a breakup and you're feeling kind of sassy and raw, that song slaps. It was amazing.
I want to play my favorite song on the record.
My friend Sally's getting married, and to me that sounds so scary. I'm still trying to clean up my side of the street. I can't imagine what would happen, 'cause I'm still acting out of habit. Hoping dirty words just don't escape my teeth.
That's such a great line. I'm hoping dirty words don't escape my teeth. Beautiful song, Maggie.
Thank you.
Reminds me of like Gillian Welch, reminds me of like Steve Earle. I just really love that song. Tell me a little bit about
Well,
it.
so much about this record, you know, I was reflecting on the records that I have the most intimate relationships with. And they're always the records that I want to put on alone in the kitchen or on a drive on like a Sunday morning. You know, I grew up writing and playing folk music, and I think in that way, so much of making Don't Forget Me felt like coming home. it felt like this, I've made dance records, I've made rock records. It felt like returning, like a palate cleanser, like returning to my roots for a minute. The next record I'm going to make is not going to sound anything like this because that would be too easy.
Yeah.
But there, even in writing Don't Forget Me, it happened so quickly and so easily because they're the songs I grew up writing. I mean, they come from, the American songbook or the North American songbook.
Thank you, Daniel.
Of my friend Sally, my friend Molly. And, the Sally story actually is real. The Molly story, I have a bunch of friends named Molly, and I'm not going to tell any of them who it's about.
Is Sally the one who got married and you went to their wedding and you felt like you were a little behind?
Yeah.
That's a true story?
That's a true story because I'm 30 and like a bunch of my friends are getting married and I'm sort of going to their weddings and I'm like, I don't know, this is not for me right now.
Yeah.
But I'm thrilled for my friends.
Yeah. I don't blame you for not saying who the Molly is, by the way. I get that. Hold on. But here's my question about that. If it came so easy, this is my gotcha moment.
All right, here we go.
I read an interview where you said, I kind of avoided writing this type of song for a long time because it's the kind of song I could write in my sleep.
Yeah.
What does that mean? Why did you avoid writing a song like this?
Well, because it's too easy.
What do you mean?
It's boring for me.
To write, that's a beautiful...
No, I know, but it's just, I know how to do it. Like, I think the thing to me about my brain or being an artist or what excites me creatively is learning new things and challenging myself or trying to write in a new way or leaning into a different influence or a different tradition. This is a tradition that I've known I can write in for a long time.
So why haven't you?
Because I've been doing other I did growing up. There's a whole archive record that's out of songs like this. Like, I made this kind of music for 6 or 7 years. Not a ton of people are paying attention, but it's deeply within who I am. And I was just excited to do other things. I mean, what's so weird about my career is the moment of discovery for me.
Alaska.
Was the moment when I was really starting to experiment. It wasn't me in my bag. It was like me trying to really test things out.
Right, because up until that point, I mean, God knows we don't have to tell the story again, but up until
we can.
Yeah, for sure. Up until that point, my understanding is you've been writing, speaking as a banjo beard guy, you've been writing banjo beard guy music. It's a joke. But you've been writing banjo-y, guitar-y music.
Songwriter.
You were a songwriter in the legacy of those artists that we mentioned earlier.
And then I spent a really long time studying music production and engineering.
Yeah.
And then I wanted to suddenly play with those new tools. I was like, oh, now I know how to program drums or work with synthesizers, and I wanted to integrate that into my songwriting.
Right.
And so I got discovered in a moment of experimentation. So Don't Forget Me as a record is actually really like me coming back to my roots, which is why this record, I love it so much because it feels really relaxed. Like I wanted to make a record that felt like worn-in denim.
A record where you didn't have to try.
Well, you're always trying.
You know what I mean? You didn't have to try beyond what is a...
There wasn't a lot of creative experimentation.
Right.
It's a Sunday morning.
It's a comfortable record.
I wanted to make something really comfortable. I also think that Surrender, I purposefully wanted to make something that was a little bit uncomfortable. And that record is like a Saturday night. This is what happens after that.
Can I ask you about the Harvard Divinity School thing?
Yeah.
Do you want to? I can either ask you why you went, or I can tell you the reason I think you went.
Oh, I want to hear why you think I went.
I was reading this article about you. I have a bunch of thoughts on it.
Great.
One is I was reading this article about you where you started to think a little bit about what you were being asked to do outside of to write songs and perform them as an artist. People were reaching out to you about, being an officiant to marry them. People were asking you for sort of spiritual advice. People were coming to you in times of mental health crisis. Mm-hmm. And you start to think, again, I should point out you didn't go into the nunnery here.
Important distinction.
Yeah, I should point out you're not living in the monastery.
I studied like religious theory,
but you're going
philosophy.
You're going in and wondering what's going on here. Why are people looking to an artist? Why are people looking to a, let's be honest, like celebrity for something they would look for from someone in the clergy in the past or a spiritual leader in the past?
I mean, that was a big part of it. Was just being like, oh, okay, I worked really hard to train for the job that I have. And then which is studying music engineering and production in my undergraduate college, and then and gigging a ton and whatever. So I become a musician. And when I became a musician, the sort of pressure of expectation of the role that I was being asked to perform was not one that I had ever really thought about, and I didn't feel qualified for it. I was like, I'm 25. Like, I don't know the answer to this.
And people were asking you.
Yeah. And I think also I was really burnt out. You know, it's very common. It takes, I had a friend say it takes 4 years of really hard touring to really make it in a grounded way. And then you go from there. And those first 4 years can kill you. I mean, sometimes doing this professionally just becomes a battle of mental health. Like, talent is a big part of it, but your ability to keep yourself sane, especially, you know, musicians, songwriters, they're incredibly introverted, sensitive people that then get put into these unbelievably high pressure, intense situations. And it's why you see people self-moderate with drugs and alcohol and any other kind of situation. But I needed to find some structure for myself. I got to the end of those 4 or 5 years and was like, the way that my career is moving, I'm so grateful for, but it's making me not want to do this anymore. And I knew that I loved music so much that it had to be an issue with the structure around it. So I needed to go really think about what I believed and really create a structure that could be sustainable. My only goal the whole time has always been to just make music forever. And I realized that if I didn't spend a year really thinking about what does it mean to me to be an artist and where are those boundaries and how do I do that in a way that is really safe and fulfilling and sustainable for me, then it was never going to work.
2 questions on that. Can you give me an example of something you learned during that time, like a real world example of something that you learned during that time that you were able to apply to your career afterwards?
I mean, a lot of it was my like independent study. And there's kind of 2 parts of going to divinity school. Like, one is like the actual academic textbook work of like reading 500 pages a day and writing papers and being in an academically intense graduate program. And then there's also being 27 and moving to a new city and living alone and making friends again and being new at something and all of the sort of self-developmental work that happens. And ultimately what I was doing was studying the philosophy around the way people talk and write about religious traditions and the way that people come together to create meaning, and then applying a lot of that to live music. And so a very simple one is like, there were times on tour or on stage where I remember feeling so much pressure to hold the room on stage. And when I went to school and was looking at all these different ceremonies and traditions, no one ever holds the space alone. You hold the space in a group. And I was completely ignoring the fact that I was on stage with this unbelievable band that had my back and was holding the space as much as I was. So when I came back from divinity school, I had a completely different like routine around rehearsal, around being on stage, around the way my bandmates are positioned around me and within me on tour. And now I have this unbelievably special band that I love and respect so much, and it's a much more collaborative thing. And I just always know that they have my back and that I'm never alone out there, that we hold that space together. And that, to me, has been such an amazing relief. And also, I just get so much out of getting to share it.
That's beautiful, Maggie. That's a beautiful answer, man.
Well, I thought about it for a long time. I wrote a master's thesis on it.
I don't know. I've been thinking a lot about fame the past little while. I've been thinking a lot. I just read this autobiography of Charlie Chaplin.
Cool.
And I had this realization that this is the most famous man that ever existed at the time.
Yeah.
Like there had never been fame like this, and it made me think about a couple of things.
Yeah.
One is that fame is really new. Like world fame, relatively new. You know, the idea of someone in Antigua knowing who the same person in North America, them having the same favorite artist, you know?
Yeah.
Kind of new.
Yeah,
Mass media helped with that.
Globalization.
Yeah, mass media,
Sure,
really.
totally.
It didn't really exist, right?
Right. You can't really do that with a fax machine.
You can't really do that with a local performer.
Totally.
Yeah. So, and then you add to now, I think the story of my 8 years on this show has been the story of the changes of fame.
You've been here for 8 years?
Yeah, you've been here for 8 years.
I know.
I know.
And when I saw, they were like, do you want to talk to Tom in Toronto? I was like, hell yeah, I want to talk to Tom in Toronto. Like, this is always my favorite thing because you've seen me through all these different stages.
I saw you right away. Like I saw you right after Alaska, and we talked about all that.
I remember.
That. You gave me I don't know if you did. You gave me a Christmas bulb. That's still on my tree.
Someone else gave that to you.
No, someone else brought it and you gave it to me, which is
really
very nice.
That's funny.
Yeah.
Oh, well, I'm glad you have that.
Yeah, I remember I was like, thanks for them. You were like, I didn't buy this for you.
I remember when I saw them, I just thought it was horrifying because I was like, the label had created these. It was an incredibly sweet gesture, but I thought it was kind of like ass kissy in a way that I was uncomfortable with.
Well, you're back, aren't you?
Here I am.
It worked, didn't it?
And actually, now that's a really cool, like very sweet
It's
keepsake.
still on my tree.
Yeah, I have one of them, and I'm actually very grateful for them now. And by the way, it was just the result of someone being incredibly caring and and generous with their time, and like that's cool.
I still love it. I still look at it. And
Okay, wait. Anyway.
I find that the 8 years that I've been doing this, thanks for keeping me on track.
Yeah,
I find that the 8 years I've been doing the show, when I look back on this time, some people see it as the development, like, oh, I can look at my 10 years on the show as this, or my 10 years on the show as this. Changing around fame. The development of parasocial relationships, the development of online
technology.
Yeah, gossip blogs. And also just people having this deep fervor and commitment to the artists that they love. That goes beyond, I like their music.
Doesn't that feel universal, though?
Tell me.
I feel like that's always been the case.
I feel like people weren't, I felt like I would be, in the old days, I'd be able to say, I don't like the Beatles without everyone trying to,
I think if you said that, it wouldn't be like online. You'd say it to your friend. Yeah. I have this thing with my friends where when things pop up online that are kind of weird, we're always just like, that was for the group chat.
Yeah.
Like, sometimes people say things online. I'm like, that's just for your friends. That doesn't need to be public.
I guess my question is, in your studies, did you learn anything about the way we treat artists and celebrities as sort of spiritual figures more than artistic figures?
They've always been like this. This is not new.
Okay.
Like, think about the voice of the people. Mm-hmm. Like, that has always been a thing. Mm-hmm. Like, since the 60s, right. Artists were in charge of the ones that had the truth and the light and the way. But this is also the case with any kind of spiritual religious figure, is that the whole point of religion or studying religion is there's no answer. No one knows. So if you believe this thing and that makes you organize the chaos of your life into a way that gives you a sense of meaning and faith and connection, that's amazing. Who am I to say that as long as that's not hurting anybody else, like, sick, like, so awesome you have that. But like, this idea, it was amazing being in class next to monks and rabbis and priests and people, imams, people from all these different traditions. And also people who were just curious, like me. And nobody knows the answer. Nobody knows. So the idea that any single person would be enlightened with some answer,
either a spiritual figure or a pop star would have some kind of answer.
Well, because here's what I can say about my experience as said pop star, if that's what we will call me today. Mm-hmm. The only thing that I can ever speak to is my experience. That's the thing that I'm an authority on. And what I can do is try and share that as vulnerably as possible and hope that in doing that, it connects other people, or that, like, the thing that I really learned by being around a lot of people who are excellent at many things is that I'm not excellent at many things, but the thing that I am very good at is giving language to the way that I feel or the way that something feels for me. That's the thing that I can do. And that's the thing that makes me who I am. And that's what making great art is to me. It's a form of caring and connection. And
people can then listen to the songs and apply them or extract them or base them to their own things.
I think that things have changed as far as fame goes. I actually think it's gotten much easier because anyone can be famous and it comes and goes. Like, I'm really famous for like a week when I put a record out. And then I'm like, oh, sick, it's done. And like I played 2 nights in Madison Square Garden. And in between night 1 and 2, I was sitting outside of a coffee shop in the West Village in New York having a latte. No one flinched. And I was like, this is perfection. Like, this is everything I've ever wanted. This is so awesome. And I'm literally selling T-shirts that say, "Who the fuck is Maggie Rogers?" Like, it's obviously a play on that great Mick Jagger T-shirt, but it's like it's awesome because if you know, you know, and if you don't, it's totally fine. Like, I'm having a blast.
What's been really interesting talking to you like every 3 or 4 years has just been watching your idea of this business and this art develop over time. And
how's it going?
You seem to be finding yourself more authentically in it constantly.
I would agree with that.
Yeah.
I would agree with that. Yeah. And I think it's also...
That was the scariest question anyone's ever asked me, by the way.
What?
How am I doing?
I feel like we're like friends at this point. You're not gonna trash me.
You gave me a bulb.
Well, yeah, come on.
I think you're finding yourself more authentically in it.
That old adage of you really have ownership over what you think by writing it down is a big thing for me. And whether that's in songwriting or, you know, this master's thesis, I've now been spending time developing it into a book and getting to really spend time thinking about the last 8 years and thinking about everything I feel so lucky and privileged to have time to learn. It's just given me a lot of clarity on what I think about all this stuff.
Thanks for coming in.
Thanks for having me.
Until next time.
See you soon.
My guest today was the incredible artist Maggie Rogers. Her new album, Don't Forget Me, is out now. She's also on tour. If her people allow her back in here again, visit MaggieRogers.com.